Good morning, good evening, and good night, wherever you may be. It's time again. I'm Chris Dickerson, Disabled List Hall of Famer, accompanied by my longtime teammate, dear friend, Mr. Paul Janish, a man as deep as the ocean. He loves all things Tex-Mex, country, and crossword. And we have our first guest on the show, Mr. Sam LeCure. And Sammy, it is so good to see you, buddy.
It's good to see you guys, man. It's been, we're catching up before we hit the record button. It's been too long. I haven't seen you. Feel like we're always around each other. Dickie, me and you out in South Bay, and Paul, I get down to Texas every once in a while, but it's good to see your faces.
Absolutely. And for those of you who don't know, I think the background of the show is Paul's and our relationship coming up through the system, and Sammy Boy was right there with us. 2004 draft pick, Sam.
5.
You guys were in the same class, 2005, and we have numerous spring training spring training living situations together between the three of us, and here we're all old men. Sammy, you got a crazy beard going. Paul's coaching, and now we're on the podcast. And yeah, so do I. I just shaved, and I still look a little bit crazy. And I don't know how I managed to do it for 2 years in New York, just fresh. I hate the look, but it's time for a little reset because the gray patches are coming in, and I'm not quite sold on that look yet. Maybe like a Connor Jackson had a nice salt and pepper where he looked very distinguished, but I'm just not there. It just looks kind of hobo patchy.
Executive Ash.
Yeah.
Executive Ash.
Sam's always had a knack for pulling things of that nature off. It's tough to make that guy look bad. Let's be realistic, Dickie.
Oh, man, you guys, come on! You already got me on the show. You don't got to butter me up now. Let's go.
Well, look, Sam, we're being serious. We're looking forward to catching up. Obviously, like you were mentioning, but we were just here to talk a little bit about the Reds, man. You've obviously been with the team the last few years. You're a little closer to them than we have been of late, and we're looking to get back involved. But wanted to ask you a few things relative to the current team. Let's start kind of with the pitching rotation. They got a few young guys in that rotation with Ashcraft, Green, and Lodolo. It looks like probably, assuming health, they're going to have their spots filled, and then how the back half of that rotation works out, we'll see. But help me out with kind of your thoughts and what you think, seeing with what those guys have ahead of them.
Well, so I just read this morning they picked Hunter Green for opening day. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think probably Nick Lodolo is a guy who's a little bit further ahead of him right now as far as polish. I mean, you can't really top Hunter's stuff, but so they're going to go in some order, those three guys. I think they bring a little bit different thing to the table. And while they're all three going to be, kind of mentioned in the same breath, I mean, they're kind of the building block for what's going to go on with Reds baseball for the next 5 or 6 years. So they're going to be at the forefront, but I think you got to separate them individually as far as the things they bring to the table. They've all got great stuff, but they go about it a little bit differently. They think the game really well, I think is something that's good about them. They're all really mature for their age. And, a lot of what's happening now is going to be, taken back to teams that we were all on, that 2010, 11, 12, 13, that little run there, because you had a lot of homegrown talent. You had Leak and Cueto and Bailey kind of at the top. So I think of the three starters as those guys. And then you've got, Brandon Phillips, a la Jonathan India. You've got the catcher behind the plate. Maybe that was a little different mix, but, when you mix in some veterans around the way, that can really do some things. So guys all coming up at the same time like we had. So I think there's a lot of optimism around this team. You've got like Alexis Diaz, is kind of like your Aroldis Chapman. So I'm just kind of making these comparisons in my head. I mean, he came up and was dominant last year, as is going to be again this year, and they filled out some of those bullpen pieces, maybe throw in, LeCure, you got a Sean Marshall, you got a whatever it is. So I'm drawing a lot of comparisons between the two teams, which I like to see.
And Sam, for coming up through the system, how exciting is that for you to watch right now, knowing that they're doing a rebuild, but also with those rebuilding years is committing to the players that they have in the system and the opportunity that these guys have to come up through the system to the big leagues together, very similar to what we had, because we were really fortunate that 04, 05 group to come all the way up through the system and get to the big leagues within a year of each other. And I always thought that was the coolest thing. One of the toughest things for me to leave when I got traded to Milwaukee is knowing that we spent 8 years together and to have to walk away from those relationships. Because I mean, we basically grew up together, and I see that a lot of that type of same opportunity with this club this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we know since we've all played together, I mean, you start building friendships, and I think that's something that Joey's doing a really good job of in camp this year. He's kind of doing that team building. They're doing the talent shows. They're doing the 3-point shooting contests. I mean, we know from the time that we all spent together how important that can show up on the field. It's just an instinctual thing. Paulie, I can look back at you at second base and know we're going to do a pickoff, and we don't have to talk about it. It's just kind of one of those things. So you get the familiarity. Dickie roaming the outfield. The more reps these guys get together, where it's going to, where they're going to be. How much ground you got to cover and all these different things. And there's a trust that's built there, because I think they've done they kind of swung and missed. After that rebuild they did around 14, 15, 16, where they were trading Cueto and Chapman and Bruce and Frazier and all that. They swung and missed on the talent they got back. And that set the organization back a long way. And that's just the fact of the matter. The talent they've brought in this time, I had some chance to see them out in Vegas a couple weeks ago. This Encarnacion Strand dude is just mashing the ball. And they're kind of getting back to the brand of baseball that fits Cincinnati, which I think is kind of that blue collar, gritty, move the ball, everybody does your part. You're going to have to mix in a superstar here and there, or a frontline starting pitcher for sure. We all know you have to have the talent to do it, but I think that they've got good pieces that fit the mold of what David Bell wants to do, and building the relationships off the field is only going to help that for sure.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off that, Sam, when you talk about mixing in some pertinent veterans, it seems like they were pretty intentional with the Casale, the Maley, the guys behind the plate. They're going to deal with the young pitchers that we talked about that are going to help out Tyler Stevenson, those kinds of things. Guys that have been on teams in locker rooms that have had winning seasons. That's a big deal, right? The Kevin Newman guy that's in all likelihood going to be in the middle of the field, or in some way, shape, or form, kind of help usher in some of these younger guys that are talented. Even if they have a year or two in the big leagues, they're still getting their feet on the ground. And sure. It seems to me like management was pretty intentional. Will Myers is another name that is he's been around the game. He knows what it looks like, right? So help me out on your thoughts there. They're, trying to be intentional with how they foster some of this young talent.
Right. Well, I think the catcher thing is a great point, just because those guys, like I said, they're kind of the building blocks. So they bring in guys, who understand how to work a pitching staff, and they're going to teach those pitchers so much just by how they're calling the game and helping them understand their stuff, and also be able to help Tyler understand what those guys bring to the table. The Kevin Newmans, you have to have, because all those trades they made last year, they brought in a ton of shortstops. So they're really heavy at the shortstop position. To be able to move some of those guys around, and having a Kevin Newman. Will Myers, I thought you brought him up kind of specifically, and I think for a reason. He played in the playoffs, had a nice run in San Diego last year. He's been, rookie of the year. He's gone 20-20, close to 30-30, had some really good seasons, been able to move around. I think they're tailoring the roster to the park a little bit better now. Will Myers shoots the ball out to right field. He's going to be able to spell Joey at first base. So they've created a little bit of revolving door to where they can interchange some guys, but keep everybody healthy. Because that was the kicker last year. It was MLB record number of players and days spent on the disabled list. I really don't care what your payroll is. You're not going to be able to win if you don't have your guys going. And all the way up and down the lineup. From their younger players to Joey to, everybody. There were 2 players on their roster last year who spent every single day active. That's insane. That's just insane. You're not going to be able to win with that. So being intentional and bringing guys who have a track record of staying on the field, being able to do some different things, and being able to, like you said, foster in this next generation of guys who are going to be wearing the Reds uniform for a long time, I think was important. And they're reading the analytics, but I think they're starting to read in between the lines a little bit, as far as being able to extract more value out of guys than what they've gotten in the past.
Yeah, that's big time. And you mentioned David earlier, David Bell, who I know I played for. I know him well. Still talk to him.
Sure.
And Freddie Benavidez is on that staff, who I'm still tight with. Help me out if you feel like it's relevant too, because we all know David is a hard-nosed guy. We know he's a baseball guy, baseball family, grew up with the game, the whole deal, right? And when you talk about Reds baseball, and I'm not talking about the last 10 years, I'm talking about the last 30, 40 years. You know what I'm saying? Like he in a lot of ways, I think, can represent that. So help me out with, your opinion there and just how his, I guess, mentality might come through with some of the younger players.
Well, so I think that's been a curiosity to me too, Paulie, is just a big turnover in some of the coaching staff. They kind of commit to a guy, and that we like his philosophy, whoever it is, pitching coach, hitting. It's been a lot of hitting coach stuff. It started, I think, with Turner Ward when he came over from LA, and then kind of COVID hit, so you didn't really get a good read on what was going on. But there's been a lot of turnover, and I think that you see it with the core group of the players. I mean, you want these guys to spend a lot of time with each other. They're going to grow together. I think that's true of the coaching staff too. So I think while it's great to have David as a constant, I think it's going to be important to have some of those other positions have, the pitching coach, assistant, whatever, outfield, game planning, all the different coaches they have now. I mean, whatever that is.
Quality control coach, Sam.
Quality control manager. You got more baseball coaching staff. Baseball coaching staffs are starting to look like football coaching staffs. You got three up in the tower. You got 7 on the field. Yeah. You got everybody calling plays. And I feel like pretty soon, now that we just dropped this, we got the pitch clock going. We're going to be calling outfield plays with like the signs.
Yep.
With like the signs, we're going to be switching off, and we're going to be calling in.
For sure.
Eyeball right, left 42 sprinkles.
Yeah. The old
it's wild. It's wild. And too, Sam, because you know what, when I knew it started getting a little bit crazy is Chris Jimenez, former player and buddy of ours. And when, his first job was basically like a strategy coach. And we talked about this. I'm like, what's happening? What exactly is that? And they're like, well, it's a game plan. And it's like, well, when do you have a set game plan early on? I mean, it's baseball. It's not like you're going to run the ball down their throat. We're going to, post up down low and beat them up on the inside. It's like, this is what we're doing wherever, chips fall where they may. But with this extended coaching staff in positions, that is a perfect comment as far as finding the continuity in the coaching staff. Because if you have guys that are rolling over every year and who aren't becoming familiar with the swings or where they are in their progression from one year to the next, where guys are at with their delivery, with their pitches, with their mix, and just polishing some of the weaker spots, like that becomes really difficult. And me, I knew that was difficult for me. I bounced around a lot, and having different hitting coaches and going into some of the more established places, you have to start from absolute scratch. They have to start from scratch with you. You have to start from scratch with them. So going to Milwaukee, it was like they had one thing. They had Prince Ricky and these guys where it was a completely different philosophy that I didn't understand, and I had to start from scratch. It was like trying to adopt this philosophy and do these drills. And we've seen that in the past where it's been really fortunate. And, all the three of us, we know guys that we've come up through the system who were just absolutely dominant. And the difference between going to a new organization and being under new guidance can be really difficult for people to adjust to. And, having Kevin Long for 2 seasons, but also spending time in Arizona, having that repetition year after year after year, that's what you need from a hitting coach, is a guy who's going to show up in spring training, know exactly where you're at and where you need to be straight out of the gate. And that's what it takes. So I think that's a really important part is finding that staff and keeping those pieces together.
Right. Yeah. Understanding, Dickie, you guys, offensive players, you get in, what drills do you, where do you like to take your flips? What time of day, being available for these guys and having, kind of the coaches that second nature of where do I need to be for which guy at what time and what are they going to want to do. So he's prepared to do it as a pitching coach. Name the turnover we had on our coaching staff when we were there. I'm not always trying to bring it back to us, but I hope that there's a lot of similarities with this club to the clubs that we had. We had no turnover. I mean, it was always the same dudes. It was Dusty, it was BP, it was Chris Fire, Mark, Billy Hatch. The same group was there all the time. So every year we came in and we had a really good feeling of what was going on, and that's just as important as far as relationships go, player to coach as player to player, and all those things. And these guys, since it's such a young group, they're coming in. They're trying to figure out the big leagues. They're rookies as it is. They're trying to figure out how to graduate to the next level. Where do I put my stuff when we travel? How much do I tip the club? All these different things that we had to learn. And then you add on top of that, maybe learning a new position. They want these guys to be versatile, but I don't feel like you get a good look at a guy unless, you put him out there at the position he's comfortable with, which he knows what glove to bring to the field every day. You guys can speak better to that, but to try to figure out how to get to the big leagues and then have a new coach every year and have a new baseline for, what the hitting philosophy is, what the pitching philosophy is, where you're going. I think it just makes it extra. It's already hard enough. And I think that makes it extra tough. So as long as they can, having David, we kind of started this with David at the top, that philosophy's been similar, but just kind of the nuanced stuff on the daily work schedule. I think it's nice to have those same guys in there, and, Freddie Benavides, we all love. So it's nice to have them there as well.
Yeah, it's that trust factor that ultimately, that's everything in baseball. You have to have guys that have not only just have your back, but that you have that trust into where they say something, wherever you're at. If, you can sit down after the game and have an honest opinion back and forth and, receive that type of, criticism and help, and then, get together and then work towards a solution. So if you go out and walk 4 people in 6 innings, it's like, you got to be able to trust that he knows exactly where you're at. And on the hitting side, if you're popping up and sending weak fly balls, you're not staying in your legs, you have to know that next day it was like, hey, let's get out, let's do early work, come meet me here 3:00. Let's do this drill. And that's that's going to get you locked in. And I saw that a lot. And that was a great thing about seeing that in New York, is Kevin Long is having these crazy drills and just having that trust, be like, hey, we're going to go do the close fence drill tomorrow. Meet me out on the field. And it's like, all right, you just be like, okay, cool. Yep. There's no hesitation where it's like, well, that's not what we did last year. We had so-and-so as a hitting coach. And when I was in this position, this is a drill we like to do. It's like, you don't need that friction. It's like, all right, let's go.
Right on.
Right on, brother.
I think that bleeds into the peer review, as well, with your players, the coaching staff. Yeah, you're going to put trust in what they say, but now that these guys are going to come up and spend some time in the minor leagues together, they get there, and it's kind of like your catch partner. Paulie, a middle infielder, Dickie, whoever you were working with in the outfield, like you kind of have a guy out there that you're running things back and forth off of. That catch partner for me knows how I'm spinning the ball a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And like, hey, you get out a little bit out front, Paulie, you got your middle infield. You're like, hey, your feed's a little low, or, from an offensive standpoint. So the more that they can develop those relationships and have the trust factor among the group. So even if the coaching staff does start to flip over a little bit, they've got their guy that they can go to that's going to give them that honest opinion and keep them in line and make sure they're going about it the right way.
Yeah, and I think that's an accountability deal too. We all know this, right? Yeah, sure. Whether it's pitching or hitting, like you got to be your own coach. If you're a good player in the minor leagues, you're going to go from A ball to AA to AAA. You're going to have a different guy. You go from AAA to the big leagues, you got a different guy. So right. I think there's a lot of relevance to what we're talking about. That being said, there's 2 things that it brings to the equation, is like some synergy from a player development standpoint at the minor league level, transitioning into the big league level. But then also, a lot of the onus falls on the players, right? Like, nobody's got more vested interest in anybody other than yourself.
It's your career.
Never heard that. Never heard that.
Yeah, right.
If you don't like it, play better. So anyway, all of those things are relevant, but I think a lot of it too is creating the accountability, Sam, like you're referencing with a catch partner or whatever the case is, amongst the guys to want to get good as a unit too. But hey, the next thing I was going to ask you, Sam, kind of more of a macro view. Okay, so like the division in general. Okay, competitive division. There's a couple pretty good teams, a couple teams that are trying to get good, the whole deal. So help me out from your perspective, the hierarchy a little bit, and where we fall there in Cincinnati, and what the future might hold.
Well, I think it's going to be pretty interesting. You're going to start at the top with the Cardinals, and they're great offense. They've got Goldie and Arenado. I think that they're short an ace starting pitcher as far as being able to advance to the postseason. I think they'll win the division. But then you go over to the Brewers, and they've got, they're kind of three-headed monster at the top of their rotation. So I like them a lot too. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that works out. The Brewers brought back Jesse Winker, former Red, brought him in. Maybe he has a rebound year. There was a couple guys over there who maybe underperformed. So those two I think are going to be jockeying for the top spot. I think people have lost sight of the Cubs a little bit, even though they did, get Dansby Swanson and Cody Bellinger this offseason, both pretty dynamic players. Their second half last year was pretty outstanding. And I even had to start paying attention a little bit. They brought some young guys who could throw up. They've got a kid over there named Nico Horner, who I really like. What's it do? Phil Schwindel was bopping. Patrick Wisdom all of a sudden turns into, a pretty big time power threat. And then they go get Belly and Dansby Swanson to kind of round the deal out. Now they lost Wilson Contreras. Mm-hmm. But they'll get a couple guys back. I think they might surprise some people this year. I'm hoping the Reds can do that. I'm an optimist. So I look at what I think that they're capable of. And there's a lot of potential for about 5 or 6 sophomore slumps on this group. And that's just the way that it is. They're all going into their second year. The book's out. So even kind of Jonathan India and Tyler Stevenson, they lost a lot of time last year. So they still haven't had time to necessarily adjust to how the league has adjusted to them. I think that this Reds team, if everybody, number one, stays healthy, that was the big thing for them last year. I think if they stay healthy and their guys go out and just do what they're capable of, take a little bit of a step forward, I think they're going to be a lot better than what people may be giving them credit for right now. And Pittsburgh, it seems to be kind of St. Louis, Milwaukee, I think Chicago and the Reds might be right there in the middle, but then Pittsburgh had some young arms that came up last year that I thought were pretty impressive too. A guy named Ronzi Contreras, I think Brian Hayes, if he can stay on the field, has a chance to be a really, really good player in this game. I love watching him pick it. He hits the ball pretty darn hard, needs to get in the air a little bit, supposedly. I don't know anything about that. I try to keep it on the ground, but so that's kind of how I see it shaking out. 2-1-2, but there's a blend there. I think the Cubs are ahead as far in the rebuild as far as the Reds and Pirates because they got money to spend. And that's kind of what it is. They're going to be able to accelerate their process because they can go out there and dump some money in the free agent market, what these other two teams really can't. They've got to be really dialed in on the guys that they extend. The Reds and Pirates. And they both have several guys that they need to be looking into that with. The Pirates did it with Brian Hayes, but that's kind of how I see it shaking out. Can St. Louis's offense offset their lack of maybe front? Jack Flaherty might be the biggest X factor in this whole division.
Yeah, he's coming back.
Jack Flaherty. Yeah, and he. I think obviously I grew up in Missouri. Well, not obviously to you guys, but I did, and so I always kind of followed the Cardinals and still do. But yeah, I think he's a huge X factor in this, who's going to shake out in this division because he could be the ace that the Cardinals did not get in the offseason. And I think they're banking on that. But then again, those Brewers and their top three of Woodruff, Burns, and Freddie Peralta, they've got an Ashby kid over there who's left-handed. He's got pretty nasty stuff.
Yep.
Dickie, yeah. So
I saw him throw against the Reds last year. In Milwaukee, he went 7 shutty, and it was it was impressive. It was impressive, and they're getting an upgrade. One of the Contreras brothers is in Milwaukee now, right?
That's right.
So they're getting a big upgrade at catcher as well. So they've definitely put some pieces together, and like you said, like Dusty used to say, hey man, best ability is availability.
Availability. That's right.
You can't do anything if you're not on the field.
Can't make the club in the tub, baby.
Yeah.
So that's how I seen it shake out. But I think for the most part, to bring back to the Reds a little bit and their front office and talking to some of the people there, they're really locked in on 24. Next year is the year they feel like it needs to kind of happen. But you still want to see him take a step forward this year. And you can't be sure, just like I said, some of the sophomore slump stuff. Can Joey come back and, kind of – it was just 2021, man. He had 36 or something something home runs. I mean, he was the guy in the second half. I mean, if you had a second half MVP, he was it, and he was having a good time doing it. And even last year with the shoulder issue, he was still whipping the bat through the zone like a pretty young man. I mean, I'm not going to bet against Joey, that's for sure. So if he can come back and be the guy that he expects himself to be, I'll say that, because he's going to put the proper expectations in place. If he can come and do that, that's going to be a boon. Health for India. Him and Stevenson have kind of become, the next layer of leadership in that group, and I think they both do it in a proper way. Tyler's pretty reserved, fiery player, reserved. Jonathan's an outwardly fiery player, but has kind of a soft tone to him. So if you're a certain level of guy who you need a smack in the back of the head, you go over to one place. If you need a pat on the butt, you go to another place. So they've got a couple of different guys who can do that over there. And David, I think David does a good job. I think the clubhouse likes him, and I think that's why he continues to be there amid some of the struggles, because I think David has that too. He can be the most reserved guy on his post-game interviews, which kind of pisses me off because I know David better than that. And then you see him light a fire, and he is out there so far up an umpire's butt that you can't believe it. You know,
just sitting there like poking him with a stick. Hey, David, do something.
Come on,
do something. Come on, David, do something.
Don't sleep on those brawls though. When those benches clear, somebody
he's there.
That switch flips, and it's tough to turn it off, bud.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So I think they've got a good mix. So that's why I think kind of the compilation of everything is I feel like they've got a good mix as far as, some of the personalities. They seem to get along really well. I like some of the different skill sets. They're going to run more for sure. They've been running like crazy in spring training. They've used the middle of the field really well. Lots of line drives up the middle, some actual two-strike approach versus just trying to swing from your heels and go yard. But they've got some guys who can hit the ball in the ballpark too. So in Vegas, the top 5 guys in the order, I think this is something I noticed, I guess. Guys that they're starting to identify now from an offensive standpoint, it seems like very much control the strike zone. Like have a really good idea of handling the strike zone. And though they may not be your boppers all the time, they've got doubles power and they're going to take their walks and they're going to be on base. They're going first to third. They've got some athleticism. So I think that'll be, it'll be a fun part of Reds baseball. If they can put it together like that, like I saw them out there, it was fun to watch. They took their walks. They took their hacks. They ran the bases well. They did some little things pretty well. I think it could be a fun year.
And Sam, when talking about running, we had this conversation last week, Paul and I, with rule changes and kind of predict the changes in the running game. Have you seen that be a factor? Yeah. Are these guys just running with the green light, or is this something that they're engaging with these two disengagements and then just timing it up on that clock, being like, I'm going to use this to my advantage and start going?
I think you're going to see a ton of that. So I think it's more of that, just figuring out how to manipulate that a little bit, maybe get a bigger lead early, get them to throw over, as your freebie. And then from the same aspect, the hitter, once you get engaged in the box, as the clock starts to run down, you can start to anticipate when you need to load, and what a great thing that is for you guys. How as a pitcher can you now disrupt timing, so to speak? You can't hold the ball on the mound with the guy on first base, and that's the best way to stop the running game. It's not by picking over, it's by holding the ball. You can't do it. So there's going to be ways as guys figure out how to manipulate this deal. I don't know if you guys saw Max Scherzer the other day when he stepped, made the guy call timeout, got right back on the mound. As soon as he stepped foot in the box, it was boom, fastball by it. So if you're paying attention, ambushed him from the mound. You don't get to see that too much. So I think there's going to be different ways to manipulate that, and I think it's going to be a fun little chess game.
Yep, I personally would have absolutely loved that. I mean, you guys remember, being leadoff and having to run and playing that chess game and looking for all these different nuances in pitcher's delivery, and now you get the opportunity to have a clock to where it's another tool to anticipate. And you get these freebies where you can basically bait these guys off, knowing that you can get back early. And then when it comes down to it, knowing that he might have been caught back a little bit in his setup, and he's gonna have to go to the plate, and you're looking for that back cleat to pop up, and you're off to the races. So I would be fired up for this time. Again, I was born a generation too early, I guess. because it sounds exciting. And like you said, you got the guys to do it. And so hopefully, Hatch has those guys ready and they're able to, to really take advantage of this and get into the knowledge and the nuances around base stealing, because I think that's going to be a huge deal. And when guys are running, it's going to open up the field more. Now that we've eliminated the shift,
yep,
you're going to have those holes opening up everywhere. So it's going to be really great to see.
I enjoyed watching it, and it's certainly more the brand of ball that we kind of played. I mean, you have the guys kind of where they're supposed to be. Paulie, you're one of the best at positioning. Dickie, you roam the outfield like crazy. But it looks more like the game. The pace of it's good. You get the ball back. Everybody's on their toes. There's not a whole lot of dirt kicking out there. You don't have – and I think the pitch clock is on both the pitcher and the hitter. And I hope you guys agree with that. I mean, a lot of times, the pitcher's walking around and taking a deep breath and, trying to get his bearings, and the hitter's stepping out and doing his gloves and trying to figure out his plan and what's coming next. So I think it's on everybody. And I think they're being punished a little bit. I mean, 15 seconds, pretty quick. I mean, Wade Miley is one of the fastest in baseball, and he was right on that. And I'm like, you're going to have guys go all the way just to the front of the line. I mean, that's kind of tough. I would have liked to see it a little bit more lax, and give maybe pitchers a little bit more of not advantage, but I think it would even the playing field a little bit, because now they're going to be under the gun because the hitters can time them, the runners can time them, and there's not as much play there for the pitcher. So I think the offensive part of the game is going to go way up this year, but it'll be exciting to watch guys get to run around and make those plays and, steal bags and do all those different kind of things. I think as traditional as I think I am, I think these rule changes move the game back to more traditional, and it'll be fun to watch.
Awesome. And Sam, I've been curious too, and just your transition, and something we'll discuss, with a number of guests that have gotten out of baseball and made a transition into something else. Your transition into your position now and getting into broadcast, is that something that you ever thought that you would do?
No, not really. Not really. And I was kind of thinking about this earlier, wondering where this conversation might go. So I thought about, and I think about, I thought about you two guys, and, Chris, you had Players for the Planet going. Sorry if I'm butchering the name now.
No, you got it. Good job.
There it is. Yep. So you've been active with that, and you were active before your playing days were over. So you knew kind of what you were going into. Paulie, you had your family growing, and I feel like you had a pretty good idea of when baseball was over for you. You're going to be taking care of your family. I was, kind of squirrely, and I didn't really know. So
the wild card.
Oh man,
Sam has always been my Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He's definitely always been the wild card.
Yeah, a little bit. So I wasn't so sure, and Major League Baseball has kind of a transition program. For the players that I went through, you take like kind of a Myers-Briggs psychology test, and it starts to give you ideas of where you might fit in. Number one on that list for me was a fireman, and somewhere in the top 3 or 4 was entertainment or whatever the case may be. And
shocker.
So I had called the Reds and asked if they had any kind of availability and could I jump in, and they're like, no, we really don't. So I had gone through all the paperwork and everything. I was enrolled to go to firefighter school, and in about 2 weeks. And then they called me back and said, hey, we've got some opportunity if you want to take it. And I was like, man, I could probably always go back to school and do the fireman thing. I'll never be as relevant in the game as I am now. In 5 years, somebody's going to be like, Sam, huh? They probably already are, but outside of Cincinnati. But so I felt like it was an opportunity for me to get in there. As I started to do it, I realized how much I would have missed not being around the game, and how much I would, miss not getting down and get a little dirt in my cleats every once in a while. So it's been really fun. Obviously, there's been some struggles that I've gone through in Cincinnati, but you got to pay your dues. And to some degree, I feel like I've paid mine for the past few years. I've gotten better at this job. I've gotten more familiar with the players, and now hopefully the payoff's going to be them playing some good baseball the next few years.
Yeah, it's definitely a transition. When I started doing MLB Network for the first couple of times, it's just being on camera, being solo, and then a lot of that has to do with who you're on with and developing that rapport with who you're co-hosting, and that in itself is a natural relationship that has to be developed. Not just how you interact with the person next to you, but how you're reading through highlights, how you're reading through the B-roll, how you're reading through. when to chime in on with the play-by-play. It's a learning process, and I'm just glad that you've been sticking around. And I remember the beginning where you're just kind of doing spots on post game, and here you become a regular. And I think this is just an exciting time for you to be a part of it. And it's great getting in at the same time when this team is kind of transitioning as you're making your transition, and so hopefully building forward.
Sure,
you're going to grow. Your occupation with the club and in this new role is going to grow as the team grows as well.
I hope so.
Hey, man.
I hope so.
Sam, that's all great, dude. But the fireman thing, all that makes me think about is sitting around a fire pit with you, bud, and maybe having a lager of your choice. Okay, so the fireman thing's still relevant. All right,
yeah. Well, that's why I figured I'd be good at it. I got so much practice sitting around a fire pit. Maybe need to put something out. Maybe need to put a little damper on it. Okay, so I figured I had some early training.
That's big time, man.
Sam, we got some, we're going to start a new segment because we don't want to get into this habit while we love talking baseball. You're the first guy and probably the most ideal guy to come up with some crazy ass answers to some of these questions. We're going to start a five random question segment here, and we're going to kick it off with you. So we're going to get into that.
Is this random as in you personally don't know what the questions are right now?
I don't even know. I'm coming straight out of the hip. I don't even know what the questions are.
I want the record to show these questions were not passed by my purview prior to this, so I'm excited as well.
That's all right. I'm breaking out. I'm going rogue on this one. So Paul, you can save it.
Mr. Go ahead, Nicky.
Mr. LeCure, what is
Paul? Paul, I see. Take a seat.
Just go ahead and mute. Go ahead and mute me. Go ahead.
What is the weirdest smell you've ever smelled?
Oh God! I know what you're trying to get out of me, and I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not going to give it. The weirdest smell I've ever smelled: Vegemite.
Oh,
good answer.
All right.
How about that?
I would have said the bus after a 15-hour road trip.
Okay. I thought I'm not going to say it. You're not going to get me to do it. All right. Next question. I know you both know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to do it.
What kind of secret society would you want to start?
Jeez. You're really going rogue here. Secret society?
Did we just tongue tie Sam?
Maybe just a boys club.
We got pretty tough to do.
We got
secret society.
Yeah, duck hunting, fires, surfing, boys club.
There you go.
Club, the Texas Club.
And what is the funniest joke you know?
Man, I mean, I can't be putting. I mean, I don't know anything clean.
Right. Exactly. That's the best. Oh yeah, we have. Yeah, I think.
Careful
we'll pass on that one. Yeah. That would be for. We'll have to send that over to Adam Jones in the foul territory over there with Todd Frazier.
That whole group.
So that can come back with you with Valley Sports.
I mean, you guys have been around me in the clubhouse long enough. When's the last time you heard me tell a clean joke? Horse walks into the bar. What's the bartender say? Why the long face? Okay, next question.
Oh man.
What is the most embarrassing thing you've worn?
Oh, man, so it's not really embarrassing. I mean, I wouldn't say I don't get embarrassed by too much because, like Paulie said, it's hard to make me look bad. But I'll never forget before my first start in the big leagues, and this will tie into new Hall of Famer Scott Rowland. You know how he does. So I was out shopping with somebody kind of the day before my debut. Okay, and somebody had bought me like one of those things. It was kind of like a beanie, but it would like bag up a little bit, almost like you'd see like a Rastafarian-ish type wear, that would kind of bag up in the back and how you wore it. And Dickie, I know you've worn one like it. So, no. That's not. I'm just thinking about what Scott was going to say. So, as he walked by with his little smart ass quips, and so I'm just standing. Like I just get there. I mean, it's 2:30. I'm getting ready to rock and roll for the major league debut, and Scott walks by and just like, "Hey, you just get called up?" And I was like, "Yep." And he goes, "Nice drug helmet." So, I mean, I thought I'd never wore it again. I just promise you, I'd never wore it again. I wanted to give it away. So I wasn't real embarrassed about it, but a good story anyway.
That's awesome, because I feel like we needed to shine. Paul and I we didn't have enough time just getting through Scott's career, and that's one of the dynamics that we wanted to get more into is
that's great.
Shit that used to come out of Scott's mouth sometimes was so dry, but the delivery was everything with Scott.
It would hurt.
He typically nailed it. Okay, that's a good example, but he typically nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good old Scott. Congrats.
And what is the absolute worst name that you can name your child?
The first thing that comes to mind is Keith. I think there was a Family Guy episode. It's like you were talking about the worst name. I think there's actually on there the worst name in the world, Keith. But sorry to all you Keiths out there.
I don't know a whole lot of Keiths, actually.
I don't know a whole lot of Keiths either.
What about Keith Stone, Sam? You ever heard of Keith Stone?
You ever heard of Doug Stone, Paul Janish? You better believe it.
As luck would have it. Yeah.
As you know, you're Texas country gold, man. You know some Doug Stone.
Oh man, Sam, it's been fun, bud. Gosh,
yeah, I appreciate you guys.
We got to get together more.
Yeah, we do. We'll maybe have to do a little segment every couple months during the season. Do a little update on what's going on, what I'm seeing around the ballpark. Maybe Paulie, when your guys' season wraps up, you guys can both come up to Cincinnati and we'll do one live and in color and something like that. That'd be fun. Or do this and get you guys on one of the pre or post game shows. That'd be great.
Sam, I'm planning on that. It's something Paul and I discussed. We're actually there's a thread going around. The 2003 draft class is trying to put together a reunion in Cincinnati.
All right.
Just after All-Star break. So, that's definitely something I'll be looking to do. And, hopefully we'll have Mr. Joseph Daniel Votto on here a couple times throughout the season. So whether that be him going remote or me being out in Cincinnati, we'd love to have you on.
Yeah,
and get the insider and ask you some more ridiculous questions.
Yeah, maybe next time pass those by the producer next time there, huh, bud? All right. And I'll try to come up with a clean joke by then.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in again. Don't be afraid to give us a like. If you're on the YouTube channel, drop some comments. Like Paul said last week, this is a people show. Go and drop your comments, what you'd like to see us discuss next. If you have any advice, suggestions, or corrections that need to be made, let us know. Go subscribe. Give us a rating, 5 stars. You know what the deal is. Mr. Sam LeCure, we appreciate it, buddy.
It was great to see you guys, man. If nothing else, it was just great to see y'all's faces. You look like you're doing well. I'm looking forward to seeing where the show goes and being on it another time or two if you'll have me.